Hello and welcome to Mind Gourmet. My name is Nina Kaiser. I'm the co-founder of Mind Gourmet and, as always, your host today. My today's guest is Jalaja Bonheim, the author of The Magic of Circle Work, the practice women around the world are using to heal and empower themselves. And just in case you don't know her yet, here's some essential information about her. Jalaja Bonheim, PhD, is an internationally acclaimed speaker, an award-winning author, and one of the world's foremost experts in the use of circle gatherings as a tool for healing and empowering women. He's founder of the Institute for Circle Work and has trained hundreds of circle work leaders from around the world, including the Middle East, where her circles unite Jewish and Palestinian women. Her new book, The Magic of Circle Work, reveals the concepts and tools that make circle work such a magical experience. Hi, Jalaja, welcome.
Hey, hi, Nina. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you for being here, and let's dive straight into our conversation. So please tell us, what led you to begin circle work gatherings?
You know, sometimes I think you create something that you yourself need. And I started leading circles when I had just come from India, and I had been studying Indian temple dance. And I came to the United States, and I was craving something that I couldn't find. And it was a way of being together that felt, on the one hand, that felt sacred. I really wanted to have that sense that we were in the temple together. But I also wanted to be very authentic and real. I wanted a place where we could speak about the things that we really cared about in a very honest way. And also, because I was coming from a dance background, it was very important to me that we include the body. That it not just be talking and up here, that we really come down to the body. So out of my own yearning to be together with others in this kind of space, I started leading circles. And then I soon discovered that there were many others who shared that yearning with me.
Yeah. Yeah, this yearning for connectedness. And in your book, you actually speak about open-heartedness as the key for feeling connected with others, but also with ourselves and with spirit. Why is that so? And how does circle work help us to be more open-hearted and also more trustful?
Yeah, well, you know, I sometimes think of I think of a cook sometimes who, you know, when you're a cook, you need bowls and you need knives.
Yes.
And our mind is like this sharp knife. It's very good at analyzing things, segmenting, seeing the differences. But the heart is like a bowl, and the heart brings it all together. The heart is the place where we can really feel our oneness, our connectedness. And that is something the mind simply is not capable of.
Yeah.
So if we want to create a space where we really feel that sense of authentic connection, we need to come down to our hearts. It's absolutely essential. And I sometimes talk about thought addiction, you know, because we live in a society that is tremendously addicted to thinking and in general to the mind. We think that if we only think about things hard enough and long enough, we can figure everything out. It's not true, you know, and I think especially when it comes to relationships, it begins with the heart. And so when I lead a circle, that's always where we start. It's this calming down the mind, which is, of course, also really essential to all spiritual practices, and connecting with our hearts and our bodies.
Yeah. And when you describe your circle work, you speak about being willing to see and be seen in the circle, and I guess also in life, as who we really are, and showing up for ourselves and for our life. It's a matter of courage for most of us, I think. So what are your experiences with this in your circle work?
Well, you're absolutely right. I think it does take courage. And I always say to the women who come, you're the courageous ones. But I work primarily with women, not only with women, but I do think that women, it's a kind of courage that many women have. That for men, it's harder. But I think many of the women I work with recognize that the importance of that kind of courage, the kind of courage not to arm yourself, but to disarm yourself, to become vulnerable. So it's a sort of interplay of creating a space where people really feel safe and where there are certain safeguards that make it a sacred and safe place, and having the courage to then step into that space and say, yes, I'm willing to show up. And it goes through levels. You know, I've worked with many women for decades, and many say, you know, even now, even as much as they love the circle, there's a little bit of fear every time, because you're making yourself so naked, so vulnerable. Yeah. And there's no way around it. You know, for the ego, it's a little bit scary thing. And yet it's something we yearn for so much, that, you know, to really be seen for who we are and to be seen with the eyes of love. It's so basic. And I think it's something we yearn to receive, but it's also something we yearn to give to others, that sense of, yes, I see you and I can accept you where you are.
And I am okay with you seeing me.
Yes.
Like as this mutual thing. And for all this to happen, the geometric form of a circle is very essential, as you describe it. And I actually very much like the way you describe how you see the circle, and I would like to quote it quickly and then to ask you to explain it a little more. You write, "Personally, I've never viewed the circle as a mere geometric form. From the start, I perceived it as a living field of presence and consciousness, as a friend, an ally, and a sacred being. In my eyes, the circle is a great spiritual teacher who can show us how to make our relationships sacred and joyful, how to deal with obstacles, and how to find our way through the fog of our ego into the clear light of love."
Yes. Well, you know, when you think about it, our ancestors have been working with circles, not just for thousands of years, but for hundreds of thousands of years. I read somewhere that the earliest archaeological evidence of a fire pit goes back 780,000 years. And of course, we can assume that our ancestors gathered in a circle around that fire. So on every continent, people have been working with circles, and they have recognized that the circle is not just a basic tool for creating community, but it's a kind of what I would call a spiritual medicine. It's what Jung called an archetype. He described the circle as the archetype of wholeness and divinity. So when we work with the circle, it has an immediate effect on our psyche. Even if we don't know anything about it, you come and you see that circle and something within you responds. Something very ancient recognizes the circle as a tool, as a medicine that can help us become what it is. And when you think, what is a circle? Well, it's centered, it's balanced, it's whole. It represents unity, oneness, sacredness, all over the world. So I think that on the one hand, it's a very ancient tool, but on the other hand, when you look at our world today and what is it that we need most urgently, Well, I would say we need to awaken to our oneness.
Yeah.
You know, as a species, as a planetary community, there is so much divisiveness and fracturing. And so in this time, I think it's no coincidence that everywhere people are starting to gather in circles, because the circle is reminding us of how to find that knowledge. And it's not an intellectual knowledge, it's really an embodied knowledge of our oneness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in combination with the circle, you also speak about the mandala and sacred geometry. Can you let us know a little bit more?
Yeah, most forms of people who work in circles don't really pay much attention to sacred geometry. It really is a feature of circle work, the practice that I teach, that in circle work, we pay a lot of attention to sacred geometry. And I feel that this awareness of the circle as a mandala, it's like a bridge that takes us out of the purely personal realm into the realm of the sacred. So as soon as we are sitting in a mandala and we have that awareness of the center, of the circumference, of what I call the heaven-earth axis, all these different geometrical elements that we work with, it really shifts the way that we are together. It's not that we're in any sense excluding the human or the personal, but it's like we're bringing in what I'd say the Native Americans would call the ceremonial dimension.
Yeah.
There's a constant awareness that we are in the presence of something that transcends the purely personal. And I think we have a great hunger for that. It is a spiritual awareness, but it is in no way religious. You know, we're not working with any kind of religious dogma or concepts. It's an embodied experience. And I really think that sacred geometry is one of the keys to creating that.
Mm-hmm. And you speak about spaciousness being so important and the courage to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it goes back to that issue of thought addiction that I was talking about. You know, we've created a world where we are constantly thinking, we are constantly busy.
Yeah.
The world is too full. Our schedules are too full. And when you think about really what is the essence of a circle, it's space.
Yes.
You know, that is the essence of a circle. So we have, on the one hand, we're a little fearful of spaciousness. We think we should fill everything up. And yet for the soul, spaciousness is so healing. It's such a relief when we can let go and we can go, oh, I can just be here. There's nothing I need to do. There is space for me to just sort of settle down and be. And so it is in that spaciousness that we start to really come home to ourselves, that we start to really reconnect with who am I?
Yeah.
And what is really important to me? And so in the circle, people a lot of times have tremendous awakenings, and these things that happen in the circle really ripple out through their lives. So I would really emphasize that circle work isn't just something we do that when we're in the circle, but it really is a way of living. So in the circle, we might have this realization that, oh, I'm spending so much time doing things that aren't really meaningful to my soul, that don't really nourish me. And so we come out of the circle and we start to make changes in our relationships, in our work. It's amazing to see how it ripples out.
Mm-hmm. And in my perception, spaciousness in our daily lives is something that we so rarely gift ourselves with.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it might be even because it can be a little scary to just be with ourselves.
Yes.
And just thinking of social media and email and cell phones and
it's all that thought addiction, you know, and that sort of, I think especially for women, you know, because I work primarily with women, and so in so many women, I see this underlying belief that somehow I'm not good enough. And I need to become better. I need to prove myself. And so, of course, that fuels that kind of, well, if I'm busy enough, the world will see that I'm valuable.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and so to have that courage to say, actually, I am good enough. And I don't need to prove myself to anyone. And I can allow myself to just be. You know, and I love, personally, I love hanging out with animals because they're such great, you know, you watch a cat, she doesn't have any of that, I need to prove myself. It's like, you know, and I can really enjoy my sense of presence.
Yeah. So in your book, you describe the 7 pillars of circle work. What are they?
Well, I probably won't go over all of them right now because that would take a long time, but we've touched on a few, like spaciousness and sacred geometry, the awareness of the circle as a mandala, the heart thinking. But another one I think is very important is what I call global consciousness. When you think about the circles of our ancestors, they were primarily tribal circles. So when you looked around the circle, the people you saw were the members of your extended family. And they looked like you, they spoke your language, they shared the same religion. When you look around my circles, you see people from all around the world. And you see people who have various different religious backgrounds and so on. And so in circle work, there's always this awareness that our little circle is part of a great web of circles, because circles are forming all over the planet today. And there's just, you know, sometimes I have this image of this web of light formed by all these people who are coming together, who love the planet, who want peace. So this global awareness is very much present. And it really informs our work too, in the sense that, let's say I've been sexually abused and I'm doing some healing work. Well, if I do that in the context of psychotherapy, it's very much focused on my personal individual journey.
Yeah.
But if we do this in the circle, first of all, you can be assured there will be other women in the circle who have experienced something similar. And because of this global awareness, there's always this sense of every step that I take towards healing, towards my own wholeness, is going to benefit women everywhere. And this is just one example, but everything we're working on, there is this sense of being part of a collective evolution that we are participating in together. So that's one of the important pillars. Another one that we've also touched on a little bit is embodiment. You know, that really it is no use doing this work up here unless it really is integrated into the body. So a circle that just sits together and talks, it can be wonderful, but it's not circle work. So in circle work, there's a lot of movement, there's music, there's silence, There's touch. I think touch is a really, really important healing tool. It's very much about taking this awareness and grounding it in our bodies, to the point that we really feel when we go out into our world that I am the circle. You know, I am embodying that awareness in my life.
Yeah.
And now another one, well, it's a lot to say about these 7 pillars, but yeah. Well, I'm going to quickly mention the sacred feminine, which, again, I would emphasize, it has nothing to do with religion. But I do feel that we live in a world that has gone very off balance, and that many of the qualities that we associate with the feminine, such as receptivity or gentleness or beauty, are precisely the qualities that our world is in great need of today. So both men and women need to cultivate these qualities. But there is something very beautiful when you see women beginning to realize that I am actually an embodiment of the sacred feminine. Especially women who've grown up with that view of a masculine God. And they might mentally think, well, I know God is not male or female, but still it has an impact on us. And when you are in a women's circle that really enters into that sacred field, that experience of the sacred feminine in each one of us, and you see it in each woman, is really life-changing for women. And I think it's very important.
Yes. And connecting to what you said before, that people connect, these women connect on such a deep level, I was very touched and impressed by what you've been writing about Jewish and Palestinian women coming together. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experiences?
Yes, I've been working in the Middle East since 2005. In the beginning, I was just working in Israel, bringing Jewish and Palestinian together there. And then I started working in the West Bank, in part because I realized that the Palestinian women couldn't leave. And so I actually led, I think it was 2010, I led the circle work training there. And the training is very important to me because it means that now the Palestinian women are leading their own circles in their own language, in their own culture. And I didn't know when I started if this process would really work there. If it, it's very, very different conditions, and there's a tremendous amount of trauma, volatile emotions. It's a very intense vortex. And at the same time, I was drawn to it. In part, I'm Jewish, I'm also German. So I've always been very fascinated with what will it take for us to live in peace? And is it possible? And I have a very strong belief that peace begins with human connection. And that if we can really come together in a safe space and encounter each other as human beings, very organically, very naturally, respect begins to grow, friendship, trust, all these things begin to develop. And so I love working there because it really affirms that for me. It's amazing to me to see these women really falling in love with each other.
So impressive.
And many of them are mothers, they want a better future for their children. And they understand so clearly that violence is not the answer. And they understand also that this work that we're doing, of course, it is about personal healing, evolution, spiritual awakening. But for them, it's also really a matter of life and death. There's just this clear awareness that we've come to the end of the road in terms of this old way of trying to resolve conflicts with violence. It's not working. It's not working anywhere. And so I really see these women as pioneers who are taking a stand and saying, we have a different way. And it's not an idealistic way. You know, people tend to poo-poo it and say, oh, it's some kind of new age idealism. It is absolutely practical. It works. And personally, I think in conflict situations, I think it's the only way that works.
So when I imagine a beginning of such a retreat, how is the atmosphere when these women are meeting each other for the first time?
It can be a little tense. I mean, you spoke about courage, you know, you can imagine if it takes courage to show up with a group of women that are basically friends, then you imagine women showing up that you've been taught from a young age to fear and distrust. These are definitely the courageous ones. There's no question about it. But I always remember this woman. She was a Israeli Jew, and at the end of a weekend, she looked around the circle and she looked at these Palestinian women sitting there, and she said to them, you know, I live in a Jewish village, and across the valley is an Arab village. And in the past, I would always hear that call to prayer wafting over, and my gut would clench. And she said, I was not proud of this, but the truth was, when I heard that, there was always this deep fear response. And then she looked at these Palestinian women and she said, you know, when I hear that call to prayer now, I'm going to think about your faces, and I'm not going to feel any fear. I'm just going to feel love, you know. So that to me is such a beautiful example of the way that the work shifts these relationships.
And this is incredibly beautiful. And to me, it shows that there are ways to be together, to come together, to solve these things that are beyond war, fights, or demonstrating to each other who is more powerful. And I'm just so touched when I read how you describe these things. And I would like to touch on one thing again that we've been talking about already a little, but there's one sentence in your book that I don't want to forget to mention again, because it's so profound, and it's what works in the circle also works in life. So how do we take these treasures that we experience in a circle into our daily lives, being without this community, at least without the physical community?
Yes, yes, yes. It really is. I always say life is where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
Like, and circle work is really a practice, which means you don't just do it once. You know, many women I work with, they've been coming to the circle work training even over and over. And in the beginning, you have this amazing experience, and you go home so inspired and so full of it. And then gradually over the months, you begin to lose it. But the more you do this work, the more you no longer lose it. It's like planting a seed, and then the tree starts to grow inside of you. And so you find that you are listening in a different way to people. You are more aware of our tendency to instantly pass judgment.
Oh, yeah.
And it's you know, one thing I love in the circle, we can't help that we pass judgment. We're just conditioned to do that. Someone walks in the door and immediately we've got our judgment. And in the circle, so often we see how very wrong we are. and those judgments just dissolve. So we start to be less judgmental of ourselves as well, more kind to ourselves. We start to listen more. We start to build in spaciousness and what you might call sort of mini circles into our lives. And even if you have 5 minutes to sit with yourself, you can really feel that sense of, oh, I am sitting in the center of a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about all the people who love you, the people who care about you in a circle around you, you immediately begin to sense that, that shift in the awareness. And I've also seen many women who start to bring circles then into their families. They have family circles, circles with children. Yesterday I was doing a little blessing circle for a friend here who has a new home. And a young woman was there who had brought her little 2-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point they had to leave. And this little boy was distraught. He just started screaming, I don't want to leave.
Aww.
And his mother later told us that he said to her, I want to live here. And she said to him, why? What do you like most about this place? And he said, the circle. So, I really envision a world where every child, every adult, everyone has these places of refuge. You think about all the refugees, the veterans,
Mm-hmm.
people in senior homes, the children, the adolescents. I feel like everyone needs this. We all need it.
Yeah. And so if people who are listening are drawn to your work and they would like to experience a circle or maybe even learn how to facilitate circles and to connect with you, what can they do?
There's so many things, but I think the easiest place to start is to go to the website magicofcirclework.com. And from there, they can connect to the website of the Institute for Circle Work.
Mm-hmm.
The Institute for Circle Work is a nonprofit organization that provides scholarships to women. So thanks to the Institute, we've been able to bring to the training women from Kenya and Afghanistan and really all around the world. And from the magic of the circle work, they can also connect to my website and find out about events and trainings and
Yes.
Everything else. Yes.
And you have very beautiful short videos on your website that I find are the perfect start to get even more familiar with what you do.
Yes, many videos. Also, I send out through my email list regular little audio meditations. And women love those a lot. They're just like 3 to 5 minutes. So in the midst of a busy day or in the morning, you can just listen to one of those and it really helps you get calm and centered. Yeah.
Yeah. So for everybody who is watching and listening, you will find all the important information about Jalaja and her work and how you can connect with her right below this interview. And I feel we are at such a beautiful place in this conversation. And to close it, I would like to ask you, is there anything that you would like to add? Have we missed something that's important?
Oh, we've missed so much. I just really love thinking about circles springing up all over the world. And us really, because I feel, as you said in that quote, that the circle is a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And at this critical time in history, it's a friend that really wants to help us, to guide us. And so I really encourage everyone to remember this friend. And many times women will say, oh, I feel like I already know this. And I think it's true, we do. It's like the circle is already in us. And we are just bringing out a very ancient knowledge that we all possess. And this is the time to use it.
Yeah, and even right now, as we are speaking, I feel some kind of circle presence between you and I and everybody who is participating in the future, because I think in essence there is no time. And so it has been such a pleasure for me to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much from my heart for sharing everything you shared and your time.
And thank you, Nina, for the beautiful work that you're doing and all the spirit you're putting out into the world. Thank you.
Thank you. It really makes my heart sing. So that's what I want to do. Well, so bye everybody, and always remember to take the driver's seat of the car called your life and create this lifetime to your taste. It's our pleasure here at Mind Gourmet to support you with our food for thought. Bye.